Good morning. Sources of Indian Constitution. Indian Constitution is a bag of borrowings. From which constitution we have taken a quality, a particular item. Sources of Indian Constitution is a topic for discussion. First, Government of India Act 1935. What we have taken from Government of India Act 1935? In the British period, in the pre-independence India, one of the last documents given by the British government to India is Government of India Act 1935. Government of India Act has 321 sections and 10 schedules. 321 sections and 10 schedules. In fact, Government of India Act 1935 is the base for our constitution. Government of India Act 1935 is the base for our constitution. Government of India Act 1935 proposed for the first time All India Federation. Till Government of India Act 1935, India worked in the unitary model. But first point is, what we have borrowed from Government of India Act 1935 is, it proposed All India Federation. Till that time, we have unitary model in India. From Britain, we have taken unitary model till that time. That entire model of British unitary model is being followed in India. But for the first time, Government of India Act 1935 proposed All India Federation. Number 2, Office of Governor. Office of Governor. During Government of India Act 1935, because it has made India as a federal setup, the center wanted to retain certain command over states. The center wanted to retain certain command over states. And Office of Governor, Governor was sent from the center to the states. This Office of Governor we have borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. This Governor will act as an agent from the center to the state. To retain the hold in the state administration, the Government of India Act 1935 had a strong office called Office of Governor, which we have borrowed to the Indian Constitution. Emergency provisions. From Government of India Act 1935, we have also borrowed emergency provisions. And we have 3 types of emergency now. National emergency, constitutional emergency or President's rule, and financial emergency. National emergency, constitutional emergency or President's rule, and financial emergency. Article 352 to 360 deals with emergency in the Indian Constitution. These emergency provisions, this idea we have borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. The lists and division of subjects. Union list, state list, concurrent list and division of subjects between center and provinces, that is center and states, we have borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. As you all know, in the present constitution, in the 7th schedule, in the present constitution, in the 7th schedule, we have division of powers. And from Government of India Act 1935, we have borrowed the post of speaker. Speaker post. You all know, Lok Sabha have a speaker, state legislative assemblies have a speaker. The idea of creating speaker is borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. Actually, speaker post is a British model and Britishers included it in Government of India Act 1935 and we have borrowed it from Government of India Act 1935. From British Constitution. Second subheading, from British Constitution. What all we have borrowed from British Constitution? First, civil services. The exam which we are writing, The model of civil services we have borrowed from British model. In Britain, they consider merit as a criteria. In India also we consider merit as a criteria for civil services. As you all know, Article 312 of the Indian Constitution, Article 312 of the Indian Constitution deals with all India services. We have 3 all India services: IAS, IPS and Indian Forest Service. We have 3 all India services. The 3 all India services, any new all India service can be created by a Rajya Sabha resolution. If Rajya Sabha passes a resolution with 2/3 majority present and voting, if Rajya Sabha passes a resolution with 2/3 majority present and voting, then Parliament may by law can create a new all India service. Then Parliament may by law can create a new all India service. Law making procedure. How we can pass the law? Law making procedure. That is introducing the bill, first reading, second reading, third reading. The entire procedure is borrowed from British model. Parliamentary form of government. Parliamentary form of government, as you all know, Britain have parliamentary form of government where Prime Minister leads the government, and parliamentary form of government, the symbolic head will be the monarch or the president and Prime Minister will be the real head. Whereas in the presidential form of government, which America follows, president is the real head. India follows parliamentary form of government where Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister is the real executive heads. India borrowed parliamentary form of government. India is a country of large diversity and parliamentary form of government is best suited for India. From Britain, we have again borrowed rule of law. Rule of law. Be you ever so high, the law is above you. You might be a Prime Minister, the other person might be a peon. Law is equally applicable to you both. The word rule of law is of British origin and it was coined by British professor called A.V. Dicey. A full stop, V full stop, D-I-C-E-Y. The spirit of rule of law we have borrowed, and Article 14 of the Indian Constitution speaks about equality. And fundamental right to equality, Article 14 to 18 of the Indian Constitution. So the term rule of law does not find place in the Indian Constitution, but the spirit of rule of law finds place in the Indian Constitution. Single citizenship is also borrowed from British model. Single citizenship. Take for example in USA, there is a citizenship for USA as a national and every state in the USA have separate citizenship. So a citizen in USA will have citizenship in the USA and citizenship in the particular state. Whereas in India and Britain, we have single citizenship. We are the nationals of Indians. We are the residents of Indians. We are nationals here. We don't provide citizenship based on Andhra, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Assam. Except for the state of Jammu Kashmir, India follows single citizenship concept. Except for the state of Jammu Kashmir, India follows single citizenship concept. Next, first past the post system. Also we have borrowed from British model. First past the post system. Also we have borrowed from British model. What is this first past the post system? In India, generally, if a constituency have 100%, 100 people, only 60 to 70 will go and vote. Take for example, there were elections. 20% voted for Mr. A, 18% voted for Mr. B, 15% voted for Mr. D, 10% voted for Mr. E. A, who got 20% of votes, is declared as elected. In India, we follow first past, P-A-S-T, past the post, P-O-S-T system, where a candidate who gets more votes is declared as elected. We won't see whether A got absolute majority or not, whether A got 50% of votes or not. A should get more votes than other candidate. This is the only criteria which we follow. This is called whoever crosses the maximum mark, whoever gets the maximum votes compared to others is declared as elected. This process of first past the post system we have borrowed from British model. Parliamentary privileges. Parliamentarians enjoy certain privileges. Article 105 of the Indian Constitution deals with parliamentary privileges in the Parliament. Article 194 deals with privileges in the state legislatures. This entire privileges, parliamentary privileges, we have borrowed from British model. Next, American Constitution. From American Constitution, we have borrowed the idea of granting constitutional status to fundamental rights. Americans were the first to grant constitutional status to fundamental rights. Americans were the first to grant constitutional status to fundamental rights. In America, they are called Bill of Rights. Next, from American Constitution, we have borrowed judicial review. Means the power of judiciary to decide the constitutional validity. The power of judiciary to decide the constitutional validity of any law made by the Parliament. If judiciary feels that the law made by the Parliament is unconstitutional, it can struck down. This power is called judicial review. In Britain, the law made by the Parliament is supreme. Nobody can question it, including judiciary. In Britain, the law made by the Parliament is supreme. Nobody can question it, including judiciary. In America, the Parliament, the American Congress, the law made by the American Congress can be questioned by American judiciary. India followed this model from America. We have judicial review. Article 13 indirectly speaks about judicial review. Article 13. Article 13 indirectly speaks about judicial review. The word judicial review does not find place in the Indian Constitution, but Article 13 indirectly speaks about judicial review. Independence of judiciary. We have borrowed from American model. Giving some independence, autonomy to judiciary, we have borrowed from American model. Procedure for removal of the judges of the Supreme Court. Procedure for the removal of the judges of Supreme Court, American model. From America we have borrowed. President is an executive head and supreme commander of the armed forces. American president was also executive head and supreme commander of the armed forces. We have borrowed the same model to the Indian president. Indian president is also executive head and supreme commander of the armed forces. This is we have borrowed from America. Next, Canadian Constitution. Indian Constitution and Canadian Constitution are called as twin constitutions. Twin, they look similar together. Canada follows federation with a strong center. In Canada, they have federation, but the center is strong. In India also we follow federation with strong center. Residuary powers we have borrowed from Canadian Constitution. Residuary powers we have borrowed from Canadian Constitution. Residuary powers means the powers which are not in the state list or concurrent list, whether they are in the union list or not. Article 248 of the Indian Constitution speaks about residuary powers. Article 248. Article 248 of the Indian Constitution speaks about residuary powers. Generally in federations, residuary powers lies with the states. For example, in America, residuary powers lies with the states, whereas in India, residuary powers lies with the center. Advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. We have borrowed from Canadian model. Article 143 of the Indian Constitution deals with advisory jurisdiction. The President can ask advice of the Supreme Court. This idea of advisory jurisdiction we have borrowed from Canadian model. Next, Irish Constitution, Ireland Constitution. What all we have borrowed from Irish Constitution? Number 1, Directive Principles of State Policy. You all know Part 3 of the Indian Constitution deals with fundamental rights and Part 4 deals with directive principles. We have borrowed directive principles from Irish Constitution. Directive principles are not enforceable in court of law. They are not enforceable in court of law. These directive principles we have borrowed from Ireland, and Ireland borrowed from Spain. Nomination of members in Rajya Sabha. In Rajya Sabha, President nominates 12 members from literature, science, art, social service. This idea of nomination we have borrowed from Irish Constitution. Procedure for election of president. Procedure for election of Indian president we have borrowed from Irish model. Procedure for election of Indian president we have borrowed from Irish model. Next, Weimar Constitution of Germany. What we have borrowed from German Constitution, Weimar Constitution. As you all know, emergency provisions as such we have borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. But suspension of fundamental rights during emergency. Suspension of fundamental rights during emergency we have borrowed from Weimar Constitution of Germany. Next, Australian Constitution. What all we have borrowed from Australian Constitution? Number 1, joint sitting. Sitting of two houses together. Article 108. Article 108 of the Indian Constitution deals with joint sitting. We have borrowed from Australian Constitution. Concurrent list. The list where both central and states can make law together. Lists as such we have borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. But concurrent list we have borrowed from Australian Constitution. Interstate trade commerce intercourse. Interstate trade commerce intercourse we have borrowed from Australian Constitution. Principles of cooperative federalism. Principles of cooperative federalism, where central and state should work cooperatively, also borrowed from Australian Constitution. Next, Russian Constitution. From Russian Constitution we have borrowed fundamental duties. In the Indian Constitution, we have added fundamental duties to the Constitution by 42nd Amendment Act 1976. We have borrowed fundamental duties to the Constitution by 42nd Amendment Act 1976. This we have borrowed from Russian Constitution. Idea of justice in the preamble. In the preamble we have a word called justice. This we have borrowed from Russian Constitution. From French Constitution, we have borrowed liberty, equality and fraternity. From French Constitution, we have borrowed the words liberty, equality and fraternity. These words belong to Rousseau. In France, these words belong to Rousseau. R-O-U-S-S-E-A-U, a French philosopher. These words are the foundation stones of French Revolution. We have borrowed these words and added in our preamble. Liberty, equality and fraternity. Next, South African Constitution. From South African Constitution, we have borrowed election of members of Rajya Sabha. How election process takes place for the members of Rajya Sabha, we borrowed from South African Constitution. And procedure for the amendment of the Constitution. Also we have borrowed from South African Constitution. Article 368 of the Indian Constitution deals with power and procedure of the amendment of the Indian Constitution. We have borrowed from South African Constitution. Next, Japanese Constitution. From Japanese Constitution, we have borrowed the concept called procedure established by law. In Article 21, we had a word called procedure established by law. Everything should go as per procedure. We should never flout the legal rules. This procedure established by law we have taken from Japanese Constitution. These are the important sources to the Indian Constitution. Thank you.